Welcome to the Court of History. I'm Sidney Blumenthal. The court is in session. I am here with Sean Wilentz, my colleague, Princeton University. Sean, I have been watching a lot of TV shows about cold cases on BritBox and other sites, and I watched one called Department Q and some
Oh,
other
that was a
one.
great one. I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But it turns out the greatest cold case of them all is Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, well, it goes on and on and on, doesn't it? I mean, you're getting to the point where the cover-up is almost as interesting. The brazen cover-up is almost as interesting as anything else in the story. And the cover-up's gotten to the point where I think Donald Trump said something for the first time in his entire life, which was to tell a bunch of reporters, "Don't talk about Donald Trump." This tells me that under grave distress, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, the person who broke that cold case is with us today. And she probably knows as much about Jeffrey Epstein, what he did, and the people he did it to as anybody. And we're eager to speak to her. She is, of course, Julie K. Brown. She's a member of the Miami Herald's investigative team. She's reopened the Jeffrey Epstein sexual abuse case with her reporting. And her probe into Epstein has won many journalism awards, including a George Polk Award, which was her second. She was also a member of the Herald's 2022 Pulitzer Prize winning team for its coverage of the Surfside condo collapse. And she is the author of Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story. Welcome, Julie, to the Court of History.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start in the present and then jump all the way back to the beginning. And in the present, what I'm really interested in, among other things, is you uncovered so many victims and interviewed them, dozens and dozens and dozens. You must be in touch with them today. And what do they tell you about what's going on, particularly with Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, running down to Tallahassee to the prison to interview Ghislaine Maxwell? Do you talk to the victims about this?
Yeah. They're there's a range of emotions. Sexual trauma victims, especially those that were victimized when they were children, often feel re-traumatized. There's triggers. And this certainly is a trigger with all the chaos surrounding this case, particularly as it concerns one of their predators, Ghislaine Maxwell. In their minds, this is just another attempt at cover-up or attempt at somehow letting the people who were involved in their sexual assaults off the hook. And so, in their eyes, this is a huge mistake. They don't even, I think, care what information she's going to provide. They don't believe that she should ever leave a jail. In fact, I've heard some of them say that she's a danger to society because of what she did and how she did it.
Yeah. Were any of them interviewed or approached by Mr. Blanche or any other member of the Department of Justice involving the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell?
I can't answer that question. I don't really know because I've been interviewing them before recent events. I interviewed them a couple of days before Blanche went down to interview her. So as far as I know, no, but it's possible they could have. There were 200 victims, so it's hard to say whether any of them were contacted.
Yeah. How would they feel? Have they voiced to you how they would feel if she were pardoned?
As I said, they just feel betrayed again. by the criminal justice system that the DOJ would even consider doing something like this. And the oddity of sending the second in command of the DOJ in to broker some kind of a deal. In their minds, it seems as though they're trying to broker another deal like they did with Jeffrey Epstein in 2008, which led to his release and also led to him being able to prey on additional victims. So in their minds, this is a re-traumatization of some of the same things that they felt back in 2008 when Jeffrey Epstein essentially was able to get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning, if we can, of the beginning of the case that was opened against Epstein. Was that that happened after a real estate deal between Trump and Epstein went bad over a Palm Beach property, and they broke up over it. And we spoke with Michael Wolff, who says that Epstein believed that Donald Trump was an informant to the authorities against Epstein to try and get even with him and cover up. I don't know if you've heard any of
I
that.
don't know. I haven't heard that. I haven't even heard that from the lawyers who have worked pretty closely with the victims on the cases. So I don't really know if that's true or not.
Yeah. So tell us about how you got onto this cold case to begin with. Because it was cold.
Well, it was cold, but it had been written about over the years. And I always felt that it was a mystery because, how does somebody get away with molesting all those girls and be able to essentially get a deal where he isn't federally prosecuted and he's able to just go about his jet-setting life again while these girls were devastated.
Right.
So I knew about that, but I always thought, how did this happen? Who in Florida, in Washington, who were the people who were supposed to hold him accountable? And then what happened, President Trump was, or I should say Mr. Trump was running for president in 2016. And there was a civil lawsuit filed by a woman who claimed that when she was younger, she had been raped by both Epstein and Trump. And this was a ongoing civil lawsuit in 2016. And I happened to see a column that was written by a lawyer questioning why the media wasn't examining this. Look at this lawsuit. The media isn't looking at this. It was right around the time that, Trump was being barraged with allegations about his, from some other women who were claiming that they were sexually, that he had committed some kind of sexual harassment or impropriety against them. So I thought, well, let me take a look at this. I've always was curious anyway. So I started, requesting the files while working on a million other stories, because as we do in local newspaper journalism, you don't have the luxury of just having one story and that's it. So anyway, I was picking away at it. And in the middle of when I was looking at it, Trump was elected president, and then he nominated Alexander Acosta to be his labor secretary. And that was boom for me, because I knew that by that time that Alexander Acosta was the prosecutor in Miami who gave Epstein his sweetheart deal.
Tell us about the sweetheart deal and the lawyers who made that deal and how that worked, involving Alex Acosta, who was then the U.S. attorney.
Right. Well, after, the allegations first came to light in 2005, 2006. It was investigated by Palm Beach police. They took it to the state attorney in Palm Beach, Barry Krischer. Barry Krischer initially was gung-ho about going after Epstein because he didn't know initially who Epstein was. So then Epstein, he was trying to keep a lid on the whole thing. So Epstein hired Alan Dershowitz, another local attorney, to pressure Krischer not to file charges. And he was on the verge of just letting the case drop, largely because Dershowitz had convinced him that the young girls that Epstein had molested weren't credible because they drank beer, they were having sex with their boyfriends. He kind of mined all their social media pages.
Yeah, I read in your book that you said that Dershowitz hired private investigators to look into the private lives of the victims.
Right, and their families, and their parents, their families too.
And what would the point of that be?
Intimidation.
So
Dershowitz hired PIs to intimidate the victims.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that's why he did it, but
on behalf of his client.
Yeah, and also it did intimidate. They were scared. When you're being followed like that and you're young, and there was at least one instance that I know of that there was a big car that was putting its headlights on one girl's house, and her lawyers had to grab her and take her to a hotel, sort of put her in hiding because they were being pursued so aggressively.
So please continue.
So anyway, Krischer got cold feet, but the Palm Beach police didn't want to let go. So they kept trying to get him to do something. Eventually he relented and opened a grand jury on the case. What we now know is that it was one of those kinds of grand jury sessions that they say you can indict someone on a ham sandwich. They didn't even call all the victims. They called one victim. And we subsequently have that grand jury testimony. And it's very painful to listen to because they allowed the grand jurors to sort of ask her questions that were like, didn't you know what you were doing was wrong? Is that how your parents raised you, kind of thing? So they were prepared to give him an indictment on a very lesser charge. And the Palm Beach police then took it to the FBI and said, this is absurd. This is a serious crime. They're going to let this guy walk. And that's when the FBI took over around 2007. They started investigating. Now, by this time, there were more victims coming forward. So initially, there was only maybe 5 or 6. And now there was, almost 24, because one girl recruited another girl who recruited another girl. So if you interviewed the girl, it would say, well, I recruited this one, and this one. And then you go to those girls and they say, well, I recruited. It was like a pyramid scheme. What he was doing, paying them to get more girls for him. So,
and Maxwell's in the middle of this.
I'm sorry.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is deeply involved in the recruitment.
Well, initially she was the one that started this effort to recruit girls around Palm Beach. She would take Epstein's valet, and she would drive to spas in the area, and she would find pretty girls at the spa, give them her business card, tell them, I have a very wealthy man. He's looking for a personal masseuse. He's going to pay you very well. You'll be able to travel around the world, etc. So she started that. And as I said, once he got his foot in the door at some of these high schools, he was able to then use the girls to bring him additional girls. So they were coming at like 3 of them a day at least to his home in Palm Beach. So the FBI took over the case, but the prosecutor, Maria Villafana, was hitting a wall it seems we now know, at every step of the way. Epstein was very shrewd in how he handled his case, in that he hired lawyers. Each of his lawyers had a tie to one of the prosecutors on the case. Jay Lefkowitz, for example, they worked at Kirkland and Ellis, and so did Alex Acosta. And Alex Acosta was very ambitious. He was a rising star in the Republican Party at the time. And so he was pressured by this lawyer who, by the way, he had enough influence to help appoint the new attorney general in 2007 or 8. I can't recall, Michael Mukasey. So he didn't want to, he was ambitious. He didn't want to bend anybody out of shape. Epstein hired Kenneth Starr.
Ken Starr is also from Kirkland and Ellis, isn't he?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And they're all Federalist Society people, aren't they?
Right. And Acosta wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. So imagine what would happen if he had prosecuted a client that they would have frowned upon.
Right.
So, they hired a woman, a defense attorney who had a relationship with one of the attorneys, I dated one of the attorneys. So he was shrewd. He hired people that had ties, to big law firms and, ties in Washington.
Yeah,
And
my understanding is Acosta was a protege of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito.
Right. He was. So
Very well connected.
So you could see what I did that no one had really done before was I was able to sort of figure out a roadmap on how Epstein and his lawyers managed to pressure the prosecutors to basically give him a deal. I mean, he tried very hard to get off scot-free, but he wasn't able to do that. But ultimately, what the one thing he was really able to do was keep the deal secret, because had the victims or their lawyers found out exactly what they were doing, they would have objected very publicly. So he was able to get the prosecutors to agree to seal the deal so that nobody knew what it was. And so when he appeared to plead guilty, nobody.
Ken Starr was doing this. Ken Starr would.
Yeah, it was Ken Starr, and it was he had a whole team of people. Lefkowitz was certainly involved. Dershowitz
Another
was
prominent, very well-connected conservative attorney.
Right. And so, the deal came together, and boom, it was done before anybody knew about it. He was serving time in the Palm Beach County Jail, which was not much of a term, a jail term, because he was leaving every day to go to his office and sometimes even his home in Palm Beach. He completely manipulated the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office to allow him to essentially leave all day long and come back and just sleep there at night. In the meantime, he was at his office, and he hired all these Palm Beach Sheriff's deputies, paid them thousands and thousands of dollars to so-called monitor him. Well, they were calling him a client because he was paying them so well. So they weren't paying
basically bribing them.
Yeah.
And they were allowed. He was allowed visitors all day long, and some of them were women. And we now know that he was having sex with them in his office while he was supposed to be incarcerated. So he manipulated every aspect of his so-called punishment. So by the time, the victims filed a motion with the judge to unseal it, by the time it was unsealed, Jeffrey Epstein was walking out of jail and had already served his short jail term.
Yeah, and then Alex Acosta, what happened to him? Didn't he?
Didn't he go on to greater things later on?
He did become labor secretary, and then he had to resign. We don't know where I think he's on Fox News sometimes now, talking about the economy since he was labor secretary. But
he had to resign because of the reopening of the.
Most of my story, yeah.
You did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what happened was my story came out in November of 2018, and it just really went, viral. And some prosecutors in the office of the Southern District of New York, the DOJ's office in New York, took the story that I wrote, showed it to the prosecutor, and said, we've got to do something about this. What can we do? So he said, investigate, find out if there's any victims here in New York, find out, look into it. So that's how it all started.
Yeah, the Attorney General of Florida was Pam Bondi at the time. What was her?
For the tail end. She was not Attorney General when the deal was struck, but there was a lot of information that came out subsequent to the deal. In other words, the victims filed a lawsuit claiming that the federal government violated their rights because they didn't tell them about the you're supposed to, under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, inform victims when someone's reached a plea deal or is appearing in court. And they didn't do any of that. They purposefully, deliberately concealed this from them.
Bondi and Bondi in her office.
Yeah.
Bondi was the state. The federal government concealed it from her. But Bondi certainly over the years knew that this was a sexual predator. Okay. There was no arguing that. Even he wouldn't call himself that, but he didn't deny that he was doing this to young girls. So there wasn't like he was still saying he was innocent. He always said he was involved with these girls. He just didn't know how old they were, or how young they were, rather.
Yeah.
So as more victims over the years started suing him, there's all this discovery. And there were some stories written over the course of Bondi's tenure as Attorney General. And it would be hard for me to believe that this was a big case. It involved celebrities, former presidents. She had to know about this information. So, and as far as we know, she didn't do anything about it.
She did nothing during this period.
No, I don't think so. Because the lawyers who represented the victims were begging authorities to look at what they had uncovered as part of the discovery in the civil lawsuits they had filed against Epstein.
Yeah. One of the most interesting articles that I read of yours from this period was about your investigation of the model industry and Epstein and overlap with Trump, who had a major interest in the model industry, and they had a mutual interest.
Right. Well, there was that came out as part of the discovery in one of the lawsuits. Brad Edwards, who represented a number of victims, deposed Epstein had a company, a modeling company, and Brad Edwards deposed the accountant who worked for that company, worked for Epstein's company, modeling company. And in that deposition, she provided a lot of detail about what he was doing. And it's clear that he was using that company, a modeling company, as a cover in part for the sex trafficking that he was doing, because she was describing exactly what they would do. They would send the younger girls down to Epstein's place in Palm Beach. And she just gave more detail than we had before, including the fact that when Epstein formed that company, he said to her, I want it to be set up just like Donald Trump's modeling agency. So what that means.
And that's in that record. That she testified to that under oath.
Right.
That Epstein said that he wanted to model his modeling company that he would invest in on Trump's.
That's right. And so, we don't know what that means, whether that, we can't say that means that Trump's modeling agency was trafficking, but we do know that in some respects, Epstein's modeling company was used in part to recruit young girls from all over the world and send them to events and parties where ostensibly they would be expected to have sex with some of the, party goers.
Yeah, there are parties that are described of other people who organized models with both Trump and Epstein present. There's one that was described where they're the only two guests for 25 some young models.
Right. Epstein and Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. Jean-Luc Brunel from Paris headed Epstein's company, and he was arrested for rape and for sexual assault and hanged himself after Epstein's death.
Right.
The two were business partners.
Yeah, they were business partners and
close associates.
Well, not only that, but Brunel was one of his top recruiters. And I'm not just talking models. I'm talking about girls and young women for sex. I mean, that's what he did. Because they would make these promises to these women when they met them. We're going to get you into the modeling business. You're going to make lots and lots of money. I have a very wealthy person. He has all the contacts, et cetera. And that's how they kind of, Epstein also had a lawyer working for him. The bookkeeper told us about this, or told, Brad Edwards about this, is that they had lawyers that were helping the women from overseas get visas so that they come here for those reasons. So
that was very common at the time of HB1 or H1B visas. Trump's modeling agency depended upon those visas to bring over models, mostly from Eastern Europe, for his agents.
This is especially.
Yeah, so it's interesting given his current views on immigration, to say the least. But you are on the case here. You're exposing this as this is going on, bringing it up all again, reporting.
Right. Yeah. Even after Epstein's death, I continue to report the trail of people that helped him, including members of the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands. He employed the governor's wife there. He tossed around a lot of money to a lot of people. Remember, he was a convicted sex predator, so he was supposed to be monitored by the U.S. Marshal Service, and he just wasn't monitored at all.
This is all around the island, Little St. James, that he was doing. Is that where it all got connected? Yeah.
Right. And it's a remote island. You can only get there by boat or plane. So it was the perfect locale for him to have some of these sex parties, so to speak, or to entertain his clients and offer them food, wine, and a young girl if they wanted it. So,
what's your view of Epstein's death? Was it a suicide or what? What's your view?
I'm not convinced it was a suicide. I'm not saying it wasn't, but I just am troubled by all the holes in the whole story. And quite frankly, the fact that the videotape that the Trump administration released to try to show that it was a suicide was not the video of his wing. It was of a total another area of the jail. And if they weren't told that, then why would they, unless they weren't told that, why would they use that unless it was a desperate move to try to quiet some of these loud voices who are questioning why Trump now is not releasing more information about the case.
You would think that they'd be careful given the atmosphere and the intense scrutiny to make sure that whatever they put out would be accurate, and yet
Yeah.
they put out this faulty, to say the least, false information
Well, they did that.
surrounding
They did
Epstein's
that before too, when Bondi was saying, "Oh, I have this on my desk." She's
Yes. Right.
telling the whole world on Fox News, "Oh yeah, we have it. It's going to come out. We're going to release everything." And then she gives a binder of dated material to internet influencers, and it was just such a clearly in the victim's eyes, this was a stunt. They've been thinking that maybe Trump's going to get to the bottom of it. And here, with each step that they have taken, the victims feel, that this is, becoming another cover up, really.
Yeah. Although it's one of those cover-ups in plain sight, as we see. I mean, they do this stuff that's so clumsy, handing out things that we've known already. The whole thing with Todd Blanche going down to see Maxwell. I mean, come on, we're not stupid here, and yet they do it. And I'm not sure, in my own mind, is it about arrogance? Is it about incompetence? Is it about just they think they can get away with murder and they're going to show that they can get away with murder? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've asked that question both on the interviews that I've done on television and on social media. I don't understand the end game here. What's the end game? The end game going to be that they're going to give her a pardon and she's going to say Trump had nothing to do with this. I know that his supporters sometimes believe everything he says, but I just don't think they're going to believe this.
Yeah. So Bondi said there was no, client list of whatever that is of people who were blackmailed, but you never came across such an object ever. It seems to me that was personalized and made up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a red herring that sort of morphed by conspiracy theories on the, there was a phone directory that actually Maxwell compiled for him on a regular basis. Every time he met somebody new, she would get all his or her contact information. And so we had this thing that was referred to as the Epstein's Black Book, which was really like a Rolodex. And
I've seen it online. You can see it online, and it's got everyone in it from Barbara Walters to all sorts of prominent names from New York social life that have nothing to do with anything except that Ghislaine Maxwell knew them.
Right. And somehow this morphed into people on social media saying, "Where's his list of clients?" And then that kind of took on a life of its own. Now, I do think that Epstein kept files on people. I absolutely think he did business with a lot of the men that he that have already been named as suspects, I guess you could say, in some respect. So it makes sense that as a astute businessman, he probably kept files on these people. Now, whether that file included material about their sex life, I don't know. But Virginia Giuffre, who was one of the most outspoken victims on this and who was with him for quite a number of years, said that he would quiz her about a certain client's sexual predilections. And it was, to her, in her mind, it was a way to have something on someone.
Yeah. Epstein was friends with all sorts of prominent people, and he seemed to collect them. Among them, was somebody who also had an interest in the model industry and overlapped in the entertainment industry, who was a friend of Epstein's, and that was Harvey Weinstein.
Right. Yeah, and he was also on the message pads. The Palm Beach Police Department did a search warrant on his home at the time he was, first arrested, and they got these were the old-fashioned pink message pads where somebody called you, write their name and why they're calling.
Mhm.
There was a copy, you tear it off, but there was a copy right underneath. So they got these books of message pads. Harvey Weinstein was one of those people that called him Trump, called him. There were a lot of names of people who would call him. Now, of course, it didn't say what they wanted. It just said, Trump called or Harvey called.
Yeah, there was a report that Epstein broke up with Weinstein because Epstein raped a young woman that Epstein regarded as his own, and somehow involves Jean-Luc Brunel, the guy who ran Epstein's model agency.
I mean, why, that raises another question. Why don't they talk to Harvey? Harvey might know something too.
Now that's a very interesting question. Do you think Harvey Weinstein should be called as a witness or approached by Todd Blanche in the Justice Department?
I mean, he's a sex predator himself. So again, it's the same quandary involving someone who, are they talking because they're really being honest or because they want some kind of a deal? So I think you have the same credibility issue with him. Although I feel like he might be able to provide information that from a different vantage point, because he might not have been part of this Epstein sex trafficking operation, but maybe saw things. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't really know.
He was, despite what Donald Trump says, friendly with Trump, who attended a number of, at least, publicly reported with photographs with he and Melania attending Miramax film openings with Weinstein and taking photos with Weinstein. So they were friendly, despite what Trump says. And we don't know what Weinstein might have to offer. I've seen a photograph of Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell all dressed up at Prince Andrew's, at Windsor Castle, at Prince Andrew's daughter's birthday party.
Yeah, I had the book. I remember that. Yeah.
So there's a lot you may know.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't think that anyone wants those names to get out of the men who were very powerful and wealthy, who participated in sex with these girls and young women. I just don't think, I think they're very powerful people. And I don't think that even Trump wants those names to get out.
No.
Absolutely. No.
I want to ask you about an incident that happened. I think your story is one of the great stories of modern American journalism.
Thank you. Thank you.
You deserve all the laurels. And, this story, which you doggedly pursued, on your own, is now, completely, has American politics in its grip right now, years later. And it goes to the heart of not only, the crimes that were committed of sexual predation, but also of social power and political power. And yet, when you were nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, someone wrote a letter urging the Pulitzer Prize committee not to give this award to you.
Right. Alan Dershowitz did. Very publicly. I mean, he put it on Twitter. So I'm not telling stories here. He
Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer.
Yeah, Jeff Epstein's lawyer, right?
Yeah, Alan Dershowitz. He was,
not to mention Ken Starr, but that's another story.
Yeah, I mean, it was also, I know now that there was some, I don't know what the word is. There were a couple of journalists on the jury who didn't feel like what I did was much. Remember, by the time when they reviewed it, Epstein hadn't been arrested at that point. It was just after my series ran. So there was some feeling that, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, even so, I mean, for a defense attorney to intervene in a journalism prize seemed pretty extraordinary to me, and it's beyond the call of duty.
yeah.
Well,
I mean, it is what it is. This
yeah,
business.
he's attempted to insert himself again, and claims that Ghislaine Maxwell is the Rosetta Stone. And before she was questioned by Todd Bland, she raised her name.
Yeah. Well, she does know a lot. She was on the ground level of this sex trafficking operation. In fact, some of the girls, the victims, or I should say survivors, that's what they want to be called, the survivors, believe that she, in a way, was a bigger monster than Epstein because she was the one that made them feel safe. She was the one that brought them in. She used fraud by saying, he's going to hire you. You're going to travel. You're going to be a masseuse. She sort of acted like a motherly, nurturing type, English lady with her English accent. And they took it like, wow, she's a really smart and kind lady. And that's what kind of got them in there. So in their mind, and by the way, under the testimony that convicted her, some of these women were sexually molested by her, so it wasn't even just that she brought them to Epstein. She was involved with some of the sex. She would groom them and tell them, this is what you do to pleasure him. It would start out as a massage, but clearly then, take off all your clothes, and it would be a little further each time. So she was grooming them for sex, and she participated in that.
Yeah. So I wonder if you're in touch at all with Maria Farmer at all. And
with who?
Maria Farmer.
I've never interviewed her, and one of the reasons I tried a couple of times, but initially, she was suffering from cancer, and she was going through chemotherapy, and she just wasn't healthy enough. And then I had an interview scheduled with her. I was going to fly to Arkansas, and that night, the night before I was scheduled to fly to interview her, Epstein was arrested. So I had to go to New York. So we never really were able to connect. So I've never interviewed her.
Yeah,
tell people who she is. I mean, I'm not sure everyone will know that.
And the connection to the relationship.
Well, Maria Farmer worked for Epstein. She was one of those women that got recruited and worked but in New York. She worked for him in New York. And she was an artist, or is an artist, I should say. And he was connected to a lot of important museum people and people in the art world, and was, telling her that he would help her with her paintings and get people to look at them, and so she could sell them. In any event, she was, she has accused Epstein and Maxwell of trying to have sex with her. She rejected them. But she was there during this period of time when they were recruiting other people. So she had information. She saw some of this. And when she went to do an interview with Vicky Ward, who was writing for
Vicky Ward of Vanity Fair. Yeah.
Vanity Fair. And she told Vicky her story. She also, by the way, went to the New York Police Department to report what was going on. They referred her to the FBI. The FBI did talk to her way back in the, 2000s, early 2000s, but they never did anything about it. So
she encountered Trump, didn't she?
I'm sorry?
She encountered Donald Trump.
That's what she just said recently, yes. Trump and Epstein were friends. There's no, I don't know how you can deny that. I mean, he was they were friends. Maybe they had a falling out later, but at one point they were very close. They were friends. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that she encountered him. She encountered other people too. So, in her, you have to understand, she feels that if the FBI had listened to her back then and had truly investigated what was going on, it's possible that all these hundreds of women wouldn't have been, raped or molested or abused, in her mind. Now, as we now know, the portion about her talking about Epstein, it was a profile, by the way. Vicky Ward was doing a profile of Epstein, and the editor decided to take out the part about Maria, the allegation.
This was some years ago. I remember this. It was Graydon Carter took that out. I think he
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but she was around Maxwell. She was in that orbit where she could see what Epstein was doing. And by the way, he molested both Maxwell and Epstein molested her sister, who was younger than her, who was a teenager, and tried to ingratiate themselves. What they would do is they would buy things for these victims. These victims were dazzled by Epstein and Maxwell because they had so much money. You would go into his home in New York and there are pictures of him with Clinton and other world leaders. He had tons of money. He had a big staff that was doing everything for him. So they were sort of in awe of him, and Maria and Annie in particular wanted to go to college, and they came from, a family that didn't have means, and he was promising them that he would put them through college, put at least Annie through college.
Yeah. She tells a story that when Trump came in, Epstein said, "This one's not for you."
The first time I heard her talk about that, but, of course, with victim trauma like that, you don't always remember everything right away. Sometimes it comes back to you, years later. It's funny how your brain, especially if you're a child that's been abused or a young person, it does affect I talk to experts about this, and it does affect the way your brain works.
Yeah. You're still on the case. You're still reporting on this.
I am, yes.
Yeah. So as the Trump administration and its Department of Justice is meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell and so on and so forth, you're still out there.
Yeah, I'm still here, and I'm following tips, and I'm getting lots of them every day, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
People are
don't
emailing
share with
me.
us.
Don't tell us now. Don't tell us now. We don't want to know.
No, I'm getting a lot of people, which, by the way, when I was doing my story, my original investigation, I couldn't even get a lawyer to comment for me on that case. I had so much so many problems trying to get a lawyer to talk to me about this deal and how it worked, and just to comment on how unusual this deal was. And it really was a struggle. That it was, in some ways, finding a lawyer that was willing to comment on that case was harder than getting the victims to talk to me.
Yeah, people do listen to this podcast, we hope. And if any sources are listening, what would you say to them about, coming to you?
Well, I mean, I've done this for a very long time, so I keep my sources confidential, and I don't think I would have been able to do a story like this if I didn't know how to handle sources, because a lot of what I found out was through sources. They would point me in the right directions. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Someone who's going to point me at something that maybe nobody noticed before or saw before, or, just something that will lead me to uncover more about how this man and this woman really were able to sexually abuse so many people, so many young women and girls over 2 decades, now since, that he was able to do this. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'll listen and investigate, I guess.
Well, thank you, Julie K. Brown, the indispensable journalist of the Miami Herald, who has uncovered the Jeffrey Epstein case and is still on it.
Unsinkable as well as indispensable. Unsinkable.
The unsinkable Julie Brown. And thank you so much. And the Court of this session of the Court of History on behalf of Sean Wilentz and myself is now adjourned.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.